It's time for Around the Ozarks Sports Scene, brought to you by Fast Break Sports, the largest selection of cards and card supplies in Southwest Missouri. Now here's your host, Scott Puryear.
Welcome in to another edition of Around the Ozarks Sports Scene. I am Scott Puryear. As always, appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your day to listen to our podcast for this week. We're going to talk to Missouri State's retiring softball coach, Holly Hesse, 36-year career now in the books, and so we'll catch up with Holly on the changing face of the game of softball and her decision to call it quits now after just a glorious career over there with the Bears. We start off each week with our Look Ahead segment, kind of give you a little preview of what to watch, TV, live, you name it, here in the Ozarks and beyond. Looking at this week's schedule, it's a final home series of the year from the Missouri State Baseball Bears. They have Southern Illinois coming in for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series this week. They've got Oral Roberts here on Tuesday this week. That'll be done before this podcast goes up. But big weekend over there because it's the final weekend of home games for retiring Missouri State baseball coach Keith Gutton. Of course, Gutton, a 42-year career as the head coach of the Bears. They're having Keith Gutton Day on Saturday at 11 a.m. over at Hammons Field. It would encourage everyone to get out and support a guy that, just like Holly Hesse, has been amazing for his sport in the community and the region there. So Bears baseball against Southern Illinois, Thursday, Friday, Saturday at Hammons Field this week. Saturday, 11 a.m. start on Keith Gutton Day. High school baseball districts are going on around us pretty much in every direction. Sectionals will be on deck soon as well, early next week. Get out and catch some of that action. We got some really good baseball teams. We talked to Chris Parker of the Ozone last week about that as some of the teams to watch in the podcast last week. But track and field will hit their sectional round this weekend. Mentioned it last week that Jackson Cantwell, the Nixa sophomore, was competing in the district at Nixa, and they'd moved the shot put area to the middle of the football field. Got a chance Saturday to go catch that and saw a phenomenal effort by the kid. Threw the shot put 74 feet, 9 3/4 inches, just under 75 feet. The recognized national record in the shot put for high school is 77 feet. The actual record was by the same guy in a non-sanctioned meet, Michael Carter, at 81 feet. So Jackson Cantwell closing in on that, just a sophomore. Actually doesn't turn 16 here till the end of this month, but reaching 75 feet almost with his efforts there. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch that down the stretch. And, of course, that is a Missouri State record, and that is the longest toss ever by a high school sophomore. One other note, Springfield Cardinals are back in town. They're home this week with Midland. First game Tuesday this week through Sunday, and then they take Monday off, and Tulsa comes in next week, Tuesday through Sunday. So a chance to get out and see the Springbirds. They are still leading the Texas League North Division, a couple-game lead over Arkansas there, playing some good baseball. So get out to Hammons Field and watch Springfield Cardinals baseball action. Special guest on Around the Ozarks Sports Scene today is the retiring softball coach at Missouri State University, a 36-year career, more than 900 wins, 922 to be exact. She is Holly Hesse. Holly, thanks for joining me.
Absolutely, Scott. So happy to be on.
You betcha. Well, you know, it's over now. And have you accidentally got up and drove over to campus to do some softball stuff, or have you been able to enjoy retirement yet?
Well, we just got back Saturday from the conference tournament, and I took Sunday off, but I did go in yesterday. There are things that still have to be done and wrapped up, and I'm going to go over there this afternoon and do a few more things. So I officially don't retire until July 31st.
Okay. So the transitioning part, you'll be a big part of that then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what I'll be doing over the next couple months.
When do you think it'll start to feel weird?
Oh, probably not really until fall when it's time to go back, around August 1st when it's starting to get ready for a new class in the fall season. That probably won't really hit me until then. I mean, right now it feels just like the end of a normal year. classes are over, student athletes are gone, practices are done, competition's done. Just kind of wrapping up the year, and and then we start looking at recruiting, obviously. But I'm not someone on the staff who has really gone out and done much recruiting for several years now, so that's not really going to affect me. This feels like a normal right now, but I'm sure it'll hit me in the fall.
Have you got retirement plans? Like what's on the agenda for you with free time now?
Well, I first have to have a hip replacement in a couple weeks from throwing all that batting practice.
That's not fun. That's not fun retirement, Holly.
I know, but if I am going to have fun retirement, I got to get that fixed first. So that'll be June will be recovery from that, and then once I get that taken care of, I'm hoping that after the 4th of July, I'll be back up and running and getting on the golf course and the pickleball court and brushing up on my bridge, which I can do a lot of that now. I'll do some travel. I'll stay involved in mentoring coaches as far as work goes. I do teach a couple online classes for the University of Florida. One just started yesterday. So that takes up a little bit of my time. I teach another one in the fall. So stay involved in mentoring the next generation of coaches, maybe doing some I'm involved with a company called True North Sports, which does developmental education for coaches, so some work with them. But pretty much I'm ready to just take a break and rest a little bit and hang out with my dogs and take walks and work out and watch softball instead of coach it for a while.
There you go. Well, just a fascinating career, 36 years at Missouri State, entered this season as one of only 20 coaches with more than 900 victories. Congratulations going into the Springfield Area Sports Hall of Fame. That's going to be announced this week as well, and already in the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. When did you decide it was time? I mean, at what point did you say, you know what, this is going to be the final year?
Well, kind of 2 years ago when I had two really long-time assistant coaches in Sue Frederick and Beth Green, and Sue decided 2 years ago to retire, and then Beth retired at the end of last year. And so it's kind of 2 years ago, I thought, it's getting closer. I would like to replace Sue with somebody who would make a good head coach down the road, somebody I could mentor for a couple of years, and then turn it over. So probably, right after Sue retired, my plan was at that point to stay on for these 2 years and mentor new staff so it would be an easy transition for the program and for the players and for recruiting purposes. And so I brought Casey Griffiths on. She has spent a decade as an assistant coach at Drake, which is also in the Missouri Valley Conference, so she knows the conference. She's Midwest. She knows this area for recruiting. So she has been awesome. I know she's interviewing for the head coaching position. That will be Kyle Motz's decision whether or not she takes over the position. But, I'm hoping that with her experience in the Valley at Drake and then 2 years here, she would have a good chance to become the next head coach. So that was 2 years ago. And then this fall, after our fall season, I really sat down and thought about, am I really ready to step aside? Is this the right time? And I decided in the fall that it was, that a new staff was possibly in place, and I felt confident that the program could be in good hands, and it was just time for me personally and professionally.
One thing I always admired, of course, besides all the wins and the NCAA tournament appearances, 6 of those, 6 Valley tourney titles, 2 regular season titles, is you never really back down ever from facing competition. And I was looking back at your resume, your bio on the website, and I've grown up a lifelong OU Sooner fan and didn't realize that you'd beaten OU 4 times in your career. And you look at OU right now, and with what Patty Gasso's done down there with 3 consecutive national championships. And I guess my question is, we saw what the Caitlin Clark effect did to women's basketball this year. and the spark it gave it. Has OU kind of done that on a national basis, you think, with what Gasso and her team has done the last few years?
Oh, absolutely. Women's softball is one of the highest rated, the Women's College World Series, one of the highest rated events that ESPN has on. For years, this viewership has outdone the baseball and a lot of other sports. I mean, the Women's College World Series and women's softball in general is just very much supported across the nation. The World Series is held just kind of down the road at Oklahoma City, and they've had to expand that facility, and it is sold out game after game after game. And certainly a lot of that is Patty Gasso and what she's done, and just the parity that softball has had across the nation. It used to be UCLA and Arizona, UCLA and Arizona, UCLA and Arizona, and now it's kind of Oklahoma and Texas. And so it's good to see that the bar has been raised across the country for the sport, and viewership has followed and support has followed. And that's exciting to see in my lifetime.
I'm on a Sooners football message board, and literally the only other sport they talk about on there is OU softball. You got all the other sports there, and it's either football or softball about every post on there. And I just think back, and to me, before there was Caitlin Clark, there was Jocelyn Allo, and what she was doing with the home runs, and I think that probably brought a lot of people in, not just OU fans, but people curiosity in seeing this young lady that was hitting home runs, 110 or 5 or whatever she hit for her career there. And that kind of leads into my question. Has the game of softball changed in that regard since you started your career versus what it is now? And if so, in what ways? Is it a power game now where you're looking for the 3-run homer always? Yeah,
pretty much. When they changed the color of the ball, the core of the ball, they changed the technology in the bats, they've standardized fence distances, they moved the pitching mound back 3 feet. All of that was to create more offense in the game. Back when I played for Creighton in the early 80s and early on in my coaching career, it was very much dominated by pitching, and it's just not that way anymore. And it's probably more exciting to watch and know the home runs can change the game with one swing. We, in the Valley, for example, this year, it used to be, early on in my career, you would see the top teams in ERA were the ones who were at the top. And this year, the 4 teams that had the highest batting average, slugging percentage, on-base averages, those were the 4 teams that made it to the final 4 in our conference. So it is definitely a much more offensive game, and I think that's probably, again, why fans are attracted to it. It's a much faster game than baseball is. And it's exciting to know, our last game that we played at the conference tournament, you and I hit 2 home runs and we hit 1, and that was all the scoring there was. And same way in the championship game against Southern Illinois and UNI. Home runs decided everything. So it is definitely a power game.
And I think, too, that you mentioned it, just the time between pitches is shorter, it seems like, and the action is more nonstop. I mean, you can watch a really good softball matchup in 2 hours. You're not committing an entire night, to watch a baseball game that could go 3.5 hours. I jump on and watch Arkansas with a kid down there now, and I can leave and go mow my yard, and I'm just missed an inning, in softball. I mean, it's fast moving. That's got to be. Has that changed the pace of things? I mean, you mentioned some of the field changes, but all that was in design to make it a quicker game too, wasn't it?
Absolutely, and you kind of had to do some of that with replay because now each coach is allowed to have 2 replays, so that adds time onto the game, but then you have the 20-second clock, so again, that kind of evens that out. Yeah, I remember when baseball started the 20-second clock, I thought, am I watching this game and fast forward? Because this is not how baseball usually is. But, yeah. So the 20-second clock, that was added this year. And, we played several games in 90 minutes.
And across the board in NCAA sports now, it's a different landscape with NIL, with the open transfer portal. Basically, kids can come and go now as they please because the NCAA and schools are scared of the threat of a lawsuit, which is the lawyers are getting rich over this stuff. But, I see a lot of coaches, that have been around for a while just saying, I've had it. I don't like this part of it now. Did that play any factor in just the changing face? And has the portal and NIL hit softball hard yet?
I think at the Power 5 level, it's definitely hit softball hard. There's a lot of NIL money at the Power 5 level. I mean, OU, a couple of years ago, the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year that Michigan had went to Oklahoma for her final year and, got $135,000 in NIL money. So,
wow.
Yeah, at that level, it really has. It hasn't really affected us at our level yet, but that doesn't mean it won't, especially with Missouri State changing conferences in 2 years. But, yeah, I think a lot of coaches my age are getting out, like Nick Saban. Isn't that why he said he left? And you see Tara Vanderveer from Stanford leaving the game. You see Lisa Bluter yesterday announcing she's leaving. It just has become one of the reasons I've been able to stay so long is because I really feel that I have adapted to change over the years, especially with how you have to communicate and motivate and coach each generation. But the changes that are happening now in terms of, as you mentioned, the portal, NIL money, and now conference realignment, a lot of coaches my age are just like, yeah, enough, enough is enough, and let the next generation take care of all the how athletics operates now.
Even makes a hip replacement sound more appealing, doesn't it?
I kind of think of that.
Yeah. About the portal, and I see it happening. I remember we had Dana Ford on talking about it maybe last summer, that, the mid-majors now, if you develop a kid too well, they may be gone because they're going to get poached by these teams, and the stories that are going around about schools, whether it's the coaching staff or a handler or whomever, tampering during the year, it's just kind of gross, to hear that's going on. But is that something that's going to plague, the mid majors going forward? Is, if I really develop this girl in 2 years, I'm not going to have her for 4.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely happening. Central Arkansas had a really good pitcher last year, and they went to the NCAAs and had an outstanding year, and they got sent to the Alabama Regional, where Central Arkansas did well. And who's that pitcher pitching for this year? She's pitching for Alabama this year. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's an example right there of a mid-major having a great player who gets poached. We had a freshman, Kayla Ulrich, who's one of the top 5 in all the offensive categories in the Valley this year. And I could see people going after her after the freshman year she had.
Yeah, how do you handle that during the year? I mean, do you ever feel like you need to ask your players, hey, everything okay here? Are you getting any kind of texts or DMs on Twitter, or what's going on?
Well, I did ask Kayla that the other day when on the bus. I said, Kayla, you had a great year, I mean, it's possible Power 5 will come after you. Will you consider that? I don't think she's really thought about it. She goes, I really don't like change, so I don't think I'd be going anywhere. So
that's
her stance.
That may be the first question coaches ask recruits now. How are you with change? And
yeah.
Are you a homebody?
Exactly.
Do you like to stay put? Yes. But, you touched on it just a second ago, but the big news last Friday, the move coming from Missouri State into Conference USA, We're all kind of starting to feel around and try to gather information. And my understanding from talking to some other coaches, this was something that was pretty much kept under cloak until that morning, when the coaches were informed. Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about that conference as a softball conference? I do look at it and say, it must be warm weather because almost everybody's south of you.
Right. That's the one thing I can see that's positive about it. We used to be the most southern school in the Valley, and now we will be pretty much the most northern school in Conference USA. So certainly more appealing to go down to Sam Houston or UTEP in early April than up to northern Iowa and Cedar Falls in April. Mm-hmm. So in softball, the Conference USA got one bid. Their automatic qualifier, just like the Valley did. So I can't say that, they're a multi-bid conference when it comes to softball. Liberty is the school that won their conference tournament. And they're pretty much kind of the top of the heap in that conference in most things. And interestingly enough, Liberty is coached by Dr. Dot Richardson, who was, you probably know this, Scott, the shortstop on the first USA Olympic team.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Softball Olympic team, Dr. Dot Richardson. So they have a very well-known, famous coach who has done a good job there. So it'll be interesting. We did play a couple of the Conference USA opponents this year. We played Western Kentucky down at the NFCA Leadoff Classic in Clearwater, the opening weekend. Western Kentucky, we lost 1-0 on a really, really, really bad call at first base. So we played them even. And then we did end up playing a 4-game series against Louisiana Tech. And they're obviously in that conference as well. We did beat them once, had several other close games with them. So I think they're a conference that Missouri State can absolutely compete in softball-wise.
Interesting that you and Keith Gutton, who 42 years in the baseball head coaching job, going out at the same time. Was that just coincidence? How did you find out Keith was leaving, and vice versa? It was coincidence. Keith was over in Hammond Student Center about the same time I had talked to Kyle and told him after the fall season that I had decided that this would be my last year. And when Keith was in there, he had told me the same thing. So we pretty much made the decision about the same time, but it certainly was not a coordinated effort. I remember talking to Scott Bales about 3 years ago. I saw him at the Spark Yard, and he said, "Well, it'd be awesome if Keith went out in the same year." And darn if it just didn't work out that way. And we should clarify, this is not a movement by Missouri State to get rid of all the old people, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, it's amazing, the stability that created. But Keith had Paul Evans and Brent Thomas forever, and you had your assistants forever, as you mentioned earlier. That had to help just from a recruiting standpoint, didn't it, for kids that you went to let them know that you weren't going to be a job jumper, and I'm sure you had opportunities to go to places. What was it that kept you in place for 36 years at the same place?
Well, I just, what kind of was the same things that brought me here in the first place. Dr. Mary Jo Wynn was such a pioneer, leader, and legend in promoting sports for women before and around the time of Title IX, and the history and the success of the program had already had under former coaches like Rita Sims and Kay Hunter. It was like this was Team 56 for us, and if you listen to like the SEC, who got all 12 teams into the World Series this year, they're like on Team 27. So, Missouri State was well ahead of its time when it came to women's sports in general and women's softball. They won their national championship in 1974. Just the rich history and tradition. And then I had such great opportunities to be around amazing female coaches that were already on the staff, like legend Linda Dollar in volleyball and Cheryl Burnett in basketball. Mm-hmm. And it was a real gift to learn and grow and be under Mary Jo's leadership. And after a while, it was just a place that I loved being. I loved Missouri State, the community, Springfield, the mild winters. Early on in my career, I thought, I'll be at Missouri State a few years, and then UCLA will call me. And then I figured out, well, you only get to coach at UCLA if you played at UCLA. So Missouri State sounded like just a good place, and it's been so good to me, and I'm very grateful and blessed that I spent my entire head coaching career at Missouri State.
Well, you mentioned the great mentors you had, not just, in your sport, but other sports. And I talked to another coach on staff over there, not and obviously in softball, that said that he'd always admired the way that you have mentored coaches, not just softball coaches, young coaches, but in other sports as well. Is that kind of something that you're almost paying it forward because of what you had to?
Exactly. And to me, the last phase of my coaching career is about service and about giving back the wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom that I've gained in my years of coaching to the next generation. And I'm very passionate about coaching coaches. Not until recently has there been a lot of developmental education for coaches. If you think about it, you don't have to have a degree in coaching to coach, which is crazy, right? Everybody else around the student athlete has to have a degree. The trainer needs a certification in a degree. The sports psychologist does. The athletic trainers, the strength and conditioning coaches. I mean, everybody who interacts with the student athlete, except the coach, has to be certified and have a degree. And that's just crazy. Mm-hmm. So I've been very passionate about helping to develop educational programs for coaching. We should be certified. We should have degrees in coaching. And so I've done what I can in this last phase of my career to really give back to the next generation. And I've had great opportunities to do that for both men and women and in all sports. So that's been a real honor to me. I remember being in a class where we were developing education, and a soccer coach said, I would have never been considered being coached by a female when I was an athlete, but I'd be proud to be coached by any female in this room. And that's part of the unconscious bias in athletics, is that men can coach women, but women can't coach men. So I've been very passionate about changing some of those old standards and held views around coaching as well.
That's awesome. Did you ever get tossed in a game in 36 years?
Oh, yeah. I've been tossed a lot.
How many?
At least a dozen that I can probably think of. Twice this year. And, we went to Oklahoma State, and we left 12 runners on base that game, Scott. Uh-huh. And, to have 12 runners on base against Oklahoma State is pretty impressive. But every time we had a runner in scoring position, the strike zone went from 17 inches to 26. And after so much of that, I got tossed.
Did you get your money's worth on all of them, or did you feel like you didn't deserve
one?
Huh?
Not that one, I did not.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I got tossed at Belmont for really nothing. And I got my money's worth. After I got tossed, I got my money's worth on that one because there was no reason for me to be tossed there. Twice this year. That's probably about the average.
So you didn't exactly mellow with age then, huh?
Oh, no.
No?
Oh, no. I'm as passionate as ever about winning. Always been super competitive. I hate to lose. So when my team's being treated unfairly, I'm going to stand up for them.
Do you have any favorite teams, games, players that will stick out now that you have time this summer to reflect on things?
Oh yeah, the championship years, they certainly were special. Interestingly enough, my mom and dad attended only 3 conference championships out of the 36.
Wow.
And we won all 3 of those. And, they didn't attend any others other than those 3, and we won all 3 of those. So those are special. In 97, we went to UNI and won. 2011, we hosted at Killian. They were here. My dad passed away in 2012, but my mom was here in 2022 when we won at Killian. So those were special. Any day I hear from an alumni, any day an alumni texts me and says, hey, this happened at work today, and it made me think of you and what I learned at the softball program. I mean, that's a special day for me. The funniest thing that probably happened in my career was we had a series at Evansville 2 years ago, and it was spring holiday, and we had hit the Bill Rowe facility prior to getting on the bus, and the bats got put in the back seat of my car. And when we got to Evansville the next day for the game, all the kids are looking around at each other like, where are the bats? And I realized they're still in the back seat of my car in Springfield.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, Evansville gave us 5 of their bats. And darn if we didn't hit amazing. Annie Mueller, who, had close to 20 home runs this year, hit her first home run that weekend. Our kids loved those bats. They were so happy I left those bats at home. When we left, Madison Hunsaker said she had been using a bat that had number 25 on it. She goes, if number 25 lets me take this for the rest of the season, I'll send her a gift card. So,
Did they keep the bats or give them back?
We gave the bats back, but we thoroughly whipped them with their own bats that weekend.
I bet they were regretting the decision to be good opponents there, weren't they? That
right.
should have gone down the road to Dick's Sporting Goods in their mind now, probably. But
yeah. I mean, we did buy. I think our parents did go to Dick's and buy. I think 3 bats that cost probably about $2,000, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You going retail there. So, well, Holly, just
right.
a great career, and congratulations on shaping the minds and skills of young ladies for decades there. You've done a great job, and I appreciate your time with me today.
God, I appreciate that. I remember, do you remember the article you wrote after we won in 97?
Was it good or bad? If it's good, remind me of it.
It was a good one. You talked about how Wendy Farthing did everything but drive the bus home from that championship. Because she was the MVP, and she had an amazing series. But, yeah, you wrote a really nice article about us after the 97 championship, and I always remember that one. I always think about it when I see you.
Well, I appreciate that. I tapped into my inner Larry Hazelrig for that, probably, because you talk about a guy that was a champion for softball at all levels. That was the rig as we knew him.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He was a big fan.
Yeah, Holly, enjoy retirement. Good luck with the surgery, and we'll see you on down the road.
Okay. Thank you so much, Scott.
You bet. Finishing up our podcast, as we do each week, with Scott's thoughts, my ramblings and musings about things in the world of sport that catch my eye. Really only going to do one this week. It was a big announcement last Friday that Missouri State was going to leave the Missouri Valley Conference to go join Conference USA. Starting with the 2025 school year. Initial reaction was kind of okay, yeah, let's see what this does. It's exciting because it's different and it's new. It's a chance for the Bears to move up to the FBS level with the big boys of football. They've been playing at the FCS level, 1AA as it used to be known, so a chance to jump up and play with on the same level as your Power 5 schools, your Arkansas, Missouris, Oklahomas, all the schools around us. That did take a $5 million fee to make that jump, and big kudos to Tom Strong, the local attorney who stepped up and funded that $5 million donation to make it happen. You kind of look across the board with any move like this. Of course, the Bears had been in the Missouri Valley Conference for many, many years, but you can kind of see where it makes sense now. Originally it was, well, they're taking a step back in competition for basketball because the Valley on the men's side, for example, last year was the number 9 rated conference, while CUSA was number 16. But then when you think about that and you look at it, both of those leagues are perennial one-bid leagues to the NCAA Big Dance, the national championship tournament, March Madness. If you're going to be in a one-bid league, maybe it's not a bad thing to go to the weaker league and try to be the one bid, because if you end that string on the Bears side that goes back to 1999, all the spoils that come with it are pretty cool. You get the spike in PR and maybe a spike in enrollment from kids that see Missouri State on TV for the first time, all the things that go with that. So that may not be a bad thing, the fact that going to a weaker basketball league, maybe it's better for Beth Cunningham and the Lady Bears too as well. Start looking across the board. If you listen to the early part of the podcast, you heard Holly Hesse talk about softball. It's a league that is a one-bid league, just like the Valley. The big difference there, as it will be for baseball and for the golfs and all those teams, is you're now probably the most northernmost team in the league, playing a bunch of southern schools that have the advantage of getting out in warmer weather earlier, starting their practices outside earlier, and probably warming up with their bats in baseball and softball earlier too. So it'll be interesting to see if the baseball Bears have that luxury of they've been traditional slow starters offensively as the weather was cold in February and early March, and then warmed up with the weather. So should be a lot of fun to see how this turns out. One thing that I'm curious about on the baseball side for the Bears, they've kind of fought this roster cap of 30 for years because of Title IX and how it has to stay in balance with to kind of mirror the enrollment of the university. My understanding is Missouri State has like a 60% female, 40% male enrollment thereabouts now. So the rosters throughout the athletic department have to mirror that or come close to it in terms of number of female athletes to male. Well, with the jump to the FBS level, you're adding 22 to 25 to 30 more male football players. Will that hamper some other sports now with a roster cap? And where it comes into play, for example, with baseball, is with a 30-man roster and the Bears go down and play in Arkansas or an Oklahoma State or a Mizzou that has 40 players on the roster, you're probably missing out on 8 to 10 extra pitchers that can come in handy in the case of injuries or blow up innings by the opponent to have an arm to throw out there. So a lot of questions still to be answered on this end of things with the move to Conference USA, but I think overall it's kind of fun. It's exciting to see some new meat, so to speak. I think that was part of the decision behind it too. And you ask Kyle Moats and the athletic department, things had gotten a little stale in terms of attendance on some of the sports. You need a spark. You need something to get the fans to come to the turnstiles, because you're going to need that additional revenue now created by your revenue-producing sports through attendance and other donations and things like that to keep up with NIL and to keep up with coaches' salaries so you can keep the good coaches and all these other factors. So it's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. Congratulations to Kyle Moats and the university for pulling the trigger on it, and now we'll see where that winds up. Big thank you, as always, to Fast Break Sports, our sponsor for Around the Ozarks sports scene. It's baseball season. You're probably deep into the collecting of cards or memorabilia around the man cave. Go see Fast Break Sports on South Campbell, just south of Burger King there at Campbell and Battlefield. Fast Break Sports is your place for all things supplies and sports memorabilia in the Ozarks. That's going to do it. As always, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on Around the Ozarks Sports.